Welcome to the Howell Business Beat, where we delve deep into the dynamic world of entrepreneurship, innovation, workforce, talent, economic development, and much more, bringing you the latest insights and strategies to thrive in today's competitive business landscape. I'm Janelle Smith, president of the Howell Area Chamber of Commerce, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Dianne Samples. Welcome, Dianne.
Thank you. Always excited to be here.
And we have the pleasure of talking today with Jason Tracey, the difference maker with Roar Consulting. Welcome, Jason. Thanks for joining us today.
I love how you positioned that. That's so awesome. My pleasure. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, difference maker, yes. We always want to chat with difference makers as much as we can. I love hearing about the different things that you're doing with business, working with business, and helping people be that difference and make that difference. So with Roar Consulting, to kick off today's episode, for those of our listeners that may not know who you are, could you share a little bit about yourself and your journey to Roar?
Yeah, so I got into the world of sales way back. God, this was like 2001, so a long time ago. I was working in a nursing home, and I knew there was only so many hours in the day. I was paying my way through school. And I also knew I didn't want to go into nursing. And so I was trying to find ways to make more money. And I answered an ad that it was literally like, do you like sports? Do you like talking to members of the opposite sex? And do you like making money? And I'm like, I'm 21 years old, like boom, 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 let's go. And so I became a door-to-door salesman. And that was the worst job I've ever had. You know, it was just horrible. It was, but there was no quit in the sense of like, I burnt my bridges at the nursing home. I knew I didn't want to go back there. And so I just stayed in sales, and throughout my 20 plus career became a student of the game, and realizing that actually sales is so easy. We just make it so hard. When we do the right things for right people, when we serve and take care of people, when we have that perspective of what selling is, because to me, selling is serving at the highest level. And if we're doing it right, it is so easy. And then, oh my God, the relationships and the things you get out of it, right? It's not just like the things you get, right? I'm shaking all the money out of your pocket, but the relationships you build and how that amplifies your life has been amazing. And so I got fortunate enough. I got put in a leadership position of a company that was millions of dollars in debt. It was a wireless franchise or a wireless company agent of Verizon, and they were millions of dollars in debt. And when I met the owner of the company, or she was the managing partner trying to become the owner of this bankrupt company, she was given three options. She was told she could file for bankruptcy, close down the business. The more hopeful option was if she could find a buyer to buy their assets and get something out of it. And that kept falling through. And so she was really down to two options: close it up and file bankruptcy, or throw up a Hail Mary, restructure the business, try to restructure the debt and bring in somebody from the outside. And that's what she did. She brought me in. I was introduced from my mentor, had met her, and he was the guy that was trying to buy from her, buy her assets, and it just didn't work out. And so he said, I have this guy that I think if anybody could do it, he could. And so thankfully he plugged me in, and we made a difference really, really quick. And so I talk about being the difference. It's like coming in and seeing people. And I was during the recession, it was like 2008. And so we were broke as an organization, and luckily there was a lot of people looking for jobs. And so I was able to teach a lot of young people and a lot of people that were misplaced out of their full-time careers because they were laid off for whatever reason. I was able to teach them how to really do sales the right way. And because of that, through 9 years being there, we became the most dominant company in our industry. We won Franchise of the Year across the country in our industry, and we grew from 3 struggling locations to, when I left, we had 10 locations across the state of Michigan. And somebody was just asking me what happened to the owner the other day. She was able to sell her businesses, and now they're like a conglomerate of like 50 stores across the country, and retire and take care of her parents. So that was really cool.
That's super cool. I think I knew pieces of that journey, but I didn't know how in depth it really went, and the significant difference that you were able to achieve. That's outstanding. Super exciting. So you were there, you did your thing, had some incredible success. And then what?
And then, so then that same lady pushed me out of the plane because she knew I was always very open about what I wanted to do. I had a mentor early, before the mentor that introduced me to her, actually, that really put a bug in my ear about coaching and consulting. And I saw this vehicle of, I was tired of the wireless industry. I was hitting this wall. I didn't want to go to work every day. And I'm like, why? I've got all this empowerment. I get to do all the things. I get to take care of the people. I've hired all these people. I'm developing. I loved all that stuff. I loved doing the speeches in front of the company and getting everybody motivated and hyped up. But as we grew, I was doing less and less of that stuff. I was doing more and more of the stuff that just took my energy, and I couldn't figure out why I was hitting this wall. And so the owner of the company, Debbie, blessed and released me. She gave me a nice lump sum of money to be able to go out and start my business, because she knew that it would have been hard to do that, to just go from a six-figure income to all of a sudden nothing in trying to make it happen. And so she gave me a leeway to go out there and start it, and I ran with it.
That's amazing. How cool that she saw that in you, to be able to sit there and like bless you with that, and actually realizing the impact that you've had on her company, and in some ways just paying it forward in a really, really big way.
It just hit me and made me emotional.
I'm
like
sorry.
I was like, no, because I remember driving home and calling my wife Gracie and being like, how blessed am I to like find the right people, right? Because there's so many people that would try to keep you no matter what. Right. Or just dispose of you, or whatever the case may be, when you're used up. And to see, she was like, literally, I see that I'm preventing you from doing the thing that you're going to make all the difference in the world on.
But like, also having that confidence to sit there and say like, here, I'm going to like set you free in this world to like really do what you are made to do.
Absolutely.
So that's really cool.
So grateful for Debbie Allen. Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. And it's funny, it's ironic, because we were just talking about mentors this morning.
Stole my question.
It's just because we're like, I know.
No, you can still ask, because there's more. Yeah.
Go for it, Diane.
No, go ahead. Well, we were just in our Edge group this morning, our Women's Leadership Edge group, and that's what we were talking about, was mentorship. So can you expound on that a little bit, how you came to find your mentor, or how you connected, and how that relationship really helped you grow and give you that confidence that Janelle was talking about, to be able to... It
changed my whole entire life. And so I was a community organizer for a nonprofit called Acorn, and the chapter I worked for in Detroit was running out of money. And so they were like, hey, you got a couple choices. You can go to Iowa or Nebraska. And I was like, I don't want to go to any of those places. And so I went out and I started applying for jobs, and I had worked in the wireless industry before. I did a bunch of sales jobs, but the wireless industry was a kind of easy entry. And so I'm like, I saw a bunch of cell phone stores in Fenton. And this is a really cool story, because I stopped at the Sprint store in Fenton on Silver Lake Parkway, and I applied, and they were like jazzed. They're like, oh my God, your experience, you're phenomenal. We're actually looking for an assistant manager. We're going to give you a call. And I got in my car, like, I have a job, right? Like, they've hyped me up. I'm leaving. I'm pulling out of Fenton. And as I was pulling out of Fenton, I saw this little tiny Verizon store next to the subway. There's a Cleaners there now. But this little tiny Verizon store. And I'm like, what the heck? I'll just stop here. What's it going to hurt? It's on the way out. I stopped. I pulled in the parking lot. I went in. There was a guy basically sleeping on the counter that was working there. And I'm like, hey, I'm here to drop off a resume. He's like, oh, great. He was like the guy, Dean. He doesn't come here very often. We're one of his slower locations. I'm like, okay. He's like, so he doesn't come here very often. I'm like, okay. He's like, so I'll give it to him when he's here. And I'm like, all right, sounds good. So
that's why he takes naps.
That's why he takes naps. And I worked with the guy. Awesome, great guy. But I had to apologize for his nap taking a lot. So there was a reason why that location sucked.
Right.
And so I get on the road, and I'm like, who cares? I got this other job with Sprint anyway lined up, right? So I get on the road, and I'm driving home. I get a call from this guy named Dean, and he's like, hey, dude. That's the way he talks. He's like, hey, dude, I just came in here. I got your resume. I don't come here very often. He was like, what's the chances you can do an interview right now? And I'm like, okay. So I was halfway home to Flint. I turned around, went back, interviewed with them, and we just really connected well. And he hired me on the spot. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to take this job. If Sprint turns out cool, I'll have a decision to make. Like 7 months later, Sprint called me. They offered me a position as an assistant manager. I went and interviewed for that. But at the same exact time, I had went in there, and I was hungry, and I was knocking on doors in Detroit. It was like calling people on the phone is nothing for me at this point. People putting guns to my head, like seriously,
that's terrible.
Go and make some calls to people, no problem.
Right.
Go and build relationships in the community and do community events all day, right? That's my jam. And so I just went and I hustled while the other guy slept. And
Dean was sleeping.
No, Dean. That was Adam. Adam, great guy. Adam, I love you. if you're out there and listening. I doubt you are. But so Dean didn't come there very often, but I made sure that I got myself in front of him as much as possible because I just felt like there's something about this guy. Like you ever meet somebody that you're like, I want to be like that guy.
Yeah.
And there's just a way that he carried himself, just a level of confidence. And so 6 months into everything, I'm there, I'm making calls. And mind you, there are other busy stores and locations with salespeople not making calls and not doing the things that I'm doing. And so without me really thinking about it, I'm getting noticed by Dean. I'm getting noticed by the owner of the company. And so we always had our company meetings in Brighton, where the T-Mobile store is now. It used to be a Verizon store, and we'd always have our meetings there. And so I walk in, and the owner of the company, I didn't even know, knew my name. And I walk in, and Rob had a smile on his face, this guy's name, and he's like, hey, what are you doing after this? And I'm like, nothing. He was like, you want to go get a drink? And I'm like, are you talking to me? Like, okay, sure. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, okay, me and Dean want to talk to you. And I'm like, okay, I can't be getting fired because he's going to take me to a drink. I don't know, like, what's going on. So he takes me out. We go out to, not Stout, but anyways, we go out, we get drinks, and he offered me a manager job out in Lansing. They had a location out in Lansing that was failing. And see, that's why I told you guys 45 minutes. All my conversations go now.
But I love the storytelling component. I'm like so sucked in.
It's because of the stories,
compelling.
right?
We're just like hanging on your every word.
My life is a story. Stories are data with soul. That's something I repeat over and over again. But they take me out and they offered me this management position out in Lansing because this Lansing store was their worst location other than my Fenton location. And they had just Verizon had said, we're going to shut you guys down because there's so many violations. There were people that were going and they would drink all night, the employees, and they'd have hangovers. So they'd just come into work and they'd punch in and they'd be in the location, but they'd lock the door and that kind of thing. So just crazy shenanigans were going on. And so Verizon came to Dean and Rob and said, if you don't get somebody in there to turn this thing around, if you don't get leadership in there by like next week, we're just going to pull Verizon out and you're not going to be able to, you're basically going to be screwed. And so they saw what I was doing, said, what the heck, give this kid a chance, and threw me out there. And it changed my life because it gave me direct contact to Dean. It gave me that direct, and he was like, I'm going to be your guy. And he really was. And he saw something in me. We've had so many conversations since then. He was like, I saw somebody that was a difference maker. I saw somebody that when somebody said, when I say you need to make 20 calls, you made 40 because we were done quicker. You didn't just stop at the limit. Right. And so, he kicked my ass because I thought like an employee. I thought like a victim. I was in a victim mentality. I grew up poor. I grew up with an abusive dad, all these different things that we won't go down. But on today's episode,
we're just going to have you back.
There's more stories. Yeah. But so like he pushed my thoughts. He would ask me questions and call me out on the thoughts that I had. He would come into my location and he would kick my ass about, dust that I didn't even think of. And so whenever I thought I had everything perfect in the store, I would like be so happy that he was coming because I thought I cleaned everything personally, and he'd find something. And I was like, dude, you're killing me. And like, I think the whole exercise was to break me at some point where I just either broke and quit or I broke and decided to learn how to delegate and lead. And luckily at some point that latter thing happened. And it was like, I still have the book, like the notebook of the process that I wrote out and like my thoughts. And here's the story, right? And so I became a top salesperson in this company. Our store started growing. I started developing people, and we became eventually the number one from the worst location in the company because they closed the Fenton location when they took me out. The worst location in the company to the number one location in our whole entire company. And then we started contending with other dealers and we became known across the region. So we became the best producing store in the whole entire region. And we were in South Lansing in this like low income housing across the street. It's like not nice whatsoever. And so we're killing it. But I'm a sales guy and I'm an employee mindset. And I'm thinking, I'm killing it. And look what I've done. Look what we've turned around. And so I don't have time to do all these little things. And so if you came into my store at any given time, there'd be like a week to 2 weeks of cash deposits. And we're in South Lansing and people are coming in to pay their bills with cash. I had envelopes like this thick.
Oh, no.
I would have like $15,000 of cash and just in this location that, by the way, got robbed often.
I was going to say, talk about putting a gun to your head.
It got robbed often. What am I thinking, right? And then like I had this cockiness of like when Dean would be like, dude, can you take those deposits back? Like, yeah, dude, what are you stressing about? Like, like I didn't see the importance of it. And he had these conversations with me over and over. over and I'd get a little better and then get worse. And it just was not changing my habit. And so one day I get an email from Rob, who never talked to me, never, like, outside of that conversation he had when he promoted me, we didn't have very much dialogue. Dean was running his company. He was out building other companies and he was a multimillionaire, super awesome guy. So I get this email from Rob, and him and Dean are out in Vegas, and he's like, dude, what's it going to take? He's like, I'm out here with Dean right now, and I'm sitting here trying to figure out why you can't make a freaking deposit. And he was like, you're the worst employee I have. And mind you, I'm cocky right now. Like, I feel like I'm the best employee he has. I'm the, like, if I left, what are you guys going to do type mentality. And like, I'm reading these words and I'm pissed. Like, I'm angry, right? Like, who's this guy? He didn't even tell me, like, great job. I took this location from the worst to the first, and now we're contending other locations, and he's telling me, like, I'm the worst employee he has. Like, screw this guy. And like, something I learned from Dean is never let your employees see you vent, sweat, or see you react. And so I took my breaths, and nobody saw how I was reacting. But in my mind, I was building up my kiss my ass message that I was going to send to Rob. And I got it all the way written out. I was at home. I was about to send it. And then somebody intervened. I don't know. Somebody intervened. And I had this question pop in my head. It was like, what do you want to accomplish with this? And it was like, what do you want to happen here? Do you want to look for a new job? Do you want to go out and find somewhere else? What happens from there? You know, I don't know. Luckily I erased that email, and I sent a different one. And in that day, I pulled out my notebook and I took all the things that needed to get done in my location, like all the things I was falling down, everything that needed to be done every day, every week, every month. I wrote it all down, and I would put on my sheet of paper: Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I had my team on the other side and all the things. And I just started plugging in. On the Monday, we do this. Tuesday, we do this. Thursday, went, blah, blah, blah. And then I created a system of delegating to where these things need to be done every week. Everybody knows it. And so all I got to do is assign it, teach them, and follow up. And that's hard at first. It's extremely hard at first, especially when you have a track record of not following through. When you have a track record of saying we're going to do things differently from now on, and then you stop doing it. So this is good stuff for Stories or Data with Soul. So you guys are shaking the stuff out of me. For entrepreneurs sitting there and thinking like, oh my God, I tried this before. How long did you try it? Was it a couple hours? Was it a couple days? You've got to really push the envelope, and for people will test the fence. It's like they put the electric fence up at the farms for a reason. People will test the fence, especially salespeople. They are the best test fencers, And so, but when they see that it's not going away, and I would make it inconvenient. If you didn't do what you said you were going to do, I'd call you up at 10 o'clock or right before you was closing and be like, hey, Matt, did you get that thing done? And they're like, no, I'll get it done in the morning. Like, no. Before you check out, let's get it done and let me know when you get it done. And never again would I have a problem with somebody not getting it done, to the point when I left that company, the guy that took over my position was like, dude, I don't have to do anything. This is like an automatic dog feeder. Like, people just do their things, right? Because once you do it over and over and over again, people just know what to expect. It's a system. And so,
and it becomes habit. It becomes second nature.
Nature. And then also the results that we got out of that, oh my God, it wasn't just a little, all of it across the board. Our company we became the most dominant cellular company in the region.
Absolutely. Well, I love the story. I don't even know what to really unpack from that, but I do like one of the things that you touched on, and I think that's really instrumental to leadership is that delegation component to it, because I think it's understanding that we all only have so much capacity and so much bandwidth, right? So if you want to continue to grow, evolve, and become better and improve, you have to be able to distribute that workload or whatever the case may be in order to get where you need to be. And to do that, you also have to have a stellar team supporting that and buying into it and all being in alignment. So that's awesome that you were able to take a moment and pause. And it does make you wonder too, you can always, I think, identify some of those critical pieces in life when you're like, oh man, if I would have done that, things could have been way different for me.
Well, and then the biggest thing for me is looking back at the people that I was impacted, because it's not a cockiness thing or anything else, but legit, if I didn't come into this person's life, because there's been tough conversations and I've had so many people that have reached out that if you didn't do this, if you didn't stay with me, if you didn't kick my ass, I had to pay it back. What I got from Dean, I had to go back and pay back in my own way, right? And so these people that literally changed their lives along the way, what would have happened if I would have sent that email?
Right.
because I would have continued in my victim mindset and I would have justified and I would have became, I don't know, like it's just, you think about the things that could have happened. And so it's so cool. It's that butterfly effect.
Right. And it is interesting too, because I love that you said that, because I was just thinking about this, but there's, a moment of being uncomfortable or going through the hard stuff or the challenges is much better than just like settling and saying like, hey, I'm okay with this, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's really like have a conversation or talk about the tough stuff in order to see how we can all be better on the other side of it.
5,000%.
So, and it's interesting too, because I think it takes a minute to like really reflect and pause and say like, okay, like, hey, like, because I just like from my personal experience, I would rather like somebody, have that like Dean conversation or that moment to sit there and say like, and call you on it, right?
Yeah.
Versus to like just continue what you're doing and really just think, well, hey, I got this,
Yeah.
but do you?
But do you?
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's really interesting. So now you have Roar Consulting.
Yes.
And you work with business owners, salespeople.
When we talk about like, and I call myself a difference maker, I look at it, entrepreneurs are difference makers. They get these visions and they go out and they create these things, and and then it leads to a business where they have employees, they're impacting the community. And so I look at the group of people that I work with are difference makers as well. They have their business because they have a purpose, passion, or expertise. And then oftentimes where I get involved and start working with them is because they struggle with, one, getting people to understand their story and their message and understand they want to do business with these people and, wander into their gates or in their location or wherever you find them. And then they have a hard time once they're there. Oh my God, what do I do to connect the dots to make revenue and to serve all at the same time? Because a lot of people I work with are those heart-centered people. I got out and my business was going to be strictly like consulting from a standpoint of I'm going in and rebuilding leadership teams and coaching sales teams. And I do that. But that's not even the funnest thing I have, because what I started doing is I'd go out and pick the brains of other coaches and consultants. And so I was out having coffee with so many other entrepreneurs and coaches and consultants. And especially with the consultant group, I found out there were so many people that were better than me at coaching or consulting, to the point where I'm like, oh my God, am I really going to be good at this? But what they didn't have was that experience of understanding what sales really is it serving at the highest level. They had a totally different garbage in their head, a little voice in their head around what sales was. And so they were making it so hard. And so as I'm having these conversations, it's like, oh my God, if I don't let them know I could help them, then the next time I talk to them, they could be working a job thinking that they should have never started a business. And it took me back to a conversation I had with my neighbor when I first started my business, because she was, she came over, we were talking, and she was super excited, like, oh, great, you started a business. She was like, she used to own a bakery. And she was like, when I owned the bakery, it was so awesome. She's like, oh my God, I love getting up in the morning. I love driving. I love going and baking the food. Like, I'm getting the chills listening to her like talk with this passion. And she was like, I loved when people would come in the shop and they'd eat the baked goods and I could see their faces and they would enjoy it so much. She was like, I loved my employees. All this love. And then she was like, but we just couldn't make money. And she was like, so we were, we started hemorrhaging. And she was like, then we had to take money from her husband's payroll in order to make expenses with the business. And it worked her way up into the opposite emotion of, you couldn't pay me to start a business again. So it went from this like great place to over here. And I'm like, what if they would have paid you in the first place? You would still be there doing that thing, and you would be in your purpose and your passion. You'd be in that energy space and how much does that impact your life? Right? Like, if you're in that space of loving what you do, when you're in that space where you're giving other people tingles and raising their hair on their arms by you talking about what you do, like, oh my God, if you lived like that every day. And so that's my purpose, and my mission is to help those entrepreneurs really unlock that, uncage that beast, because there's a beast inside. Everybody has a story, and like, how do you uncage that and shift your story you're telling yourself about what people are thinking about you?
Right. And I think that with that entrepreneur, that's usually the case, I would say 100% of the time, at least I feel like it's like they have like this just innate passion of what they want to do, and they just want to be their widget maker, right? And
Yeah.
and I think sometimes it's really hard to monetize, or there's a struggle to figure out like, well, yeah, I love the value of this and I see the value of this, but like how to try to flip that a little bit to sit there and say like, well, no, you're also like really filling a really important need.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's cool that you're able to work with individuals like that and be that difference maker.
So I was telling you beforehand, I think this is another story that kind of, I think, wraps everything that you're asking me. I talked about going to Vegas and stopping in Denver because I have a client, Sparkle, that is in Denver. Sparkle Lindsay, you can't beat that name, right? Like, that's amazing.
I love
Sparkle
it.
Lindsay. And so I met her on LinkedIn, November 2020. I still have the message on my LinkedIn because that's how I was meeting everybody in 2020. We didn't have anything, and so LinkedIn was my platform. And so whenever anybody would like my posts and stuff like that, I'd shoot them a message. Or if I was looking through and I was seeing you might be interested in connecting with these people, I'd look at their profile, and I wouldn't just hit mass connect. I would go and look at their profile and find a reason to message them. And so for Sparkle, first off, her name was Sparkle Lindsay, right? Like, that's awesome. Second thing is she had worked in retail. And the third thing is she said that she had just became a coach. And so I was like, boom, we have a retail experience, retail background together. She's just starting off coaching. I'd love to know what she's doing. Her name's Sparkle. I would love to meet her. And so I shot her a message like, hey, Sparkle, awesome name. Caught my attention. I see we have some mutual background in the retail industry and that you just started coaching. Would love to connect with you. And she connected with me. She ended up being on my podcast, Coffee and Grit. It was the first podcast she'd ever been on, which was super cool. She's now since been on over 300 podcasts and TV shows. And so at the time, she was a $16 an hour employee. She was a sobriety coach. She was at the time a little over 1 year sober herself. So she was, had transformed her life and was out empowering and helping other people overcome their addictions. But she was a $16 an hour employee, and I say that very loosely because for nonprofits, they paid her $16 an hour for 40 hours, but they asked her and they picked on her bleeding heart, right? She wants to go help as many people as possible. And they said, how much can you give us for free? Right? They didn't say it that way, but they're like,
but that's essentially
what
so
they
she's
meant.
making hospital visits. She's out in her own time, not making any money,
but
right?
she just believes so deeply.
Deeply. But she knew there was something. She was trying to build out her program. And so she had this program. She was coming out with her second book right now called The Legs to Your Table. And she was building a program at the time for this organization she worked for this nonprofit organization that was this. And so she was like, I'm building it out for them and they're blah, blah, blah. And so anyways, we started going to work. She brought me on as a coach a few months later, and we started going to work building her own business and getting her out there and getting her out on podcasts and creating her content and telling her story. And it was starting to lift off, and it was getting to a point where she was starting to get some paying clients, and she was being overwhelmed with the 60 to 70 hours she was putting in her job over here, plus trying to start her business. And in the conversation, it came up, it's time to leave. But she was so attached because she was like, if I leave, they're never going to be able to replace me. And what if I pitch to them that I'll be their hired consultant? And she tried to avoid the quitting thing so hardcore that we spent the session developing a way for her to pitch them to be their consultant. So she goes in that Monday, goes to have the conversation, and they're like, she's like, can I talk to you guys? And they're like, yeah, we need to talk to you too. Do you have a minute? And she's like, yeah. So they pull her in. They're like, well, let us go first. We're going to write you up because you're putting too much time and focus into your business. And you need to really understand who's paying you.
Oh my goodness.
Sparkle called me. I quit. Quit right there.
But that's divine intervention right there. That's
intervention.
where you have to step back and realize that there's a higher power at work that's directing you, that is leading you down that path. That's amazing. I mean, it's not amazing they did that to her, but it is amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing that happened at that exact moment when she needed it
Just
to happen.
as it
Yes.
should. Uh-huh.
Just as it should.
Because if it happened at another time, it might not have had the same impact.
5,000%. And so it wasn't linear from there. It wasn't like she just went out and all of a sudden blew up. We have several cool stories that I'm sure she's going to write in her books and she puts out in her content and stuff like that. But she is a force to be reckoned with, and she's become the name in her industry. So she doesn't coach people one-on-one anymore, but she now certifies, trains, coaches, and mentors other sobriety coaches. And so government agencies, so the state of Washington, the state of Virginia, Ohio, Denver, or Colorado. They all hire her to then certify people that are interested in becoming sobriety coaches. And so she's getting income from government agencies, plus she's speaking all around the world. And she's like, so she's built this thing now that I had said she was stuck in her business. And when we went down and I had a one-on-one session with her in person, which was so awesome. This was the only second time we'd met in person. And the problem isn't now that, that she needs to do more. The problem is now that she needs to build a company. Mm-hmm. And the really cool thing is her problem isn't that she doesn't have the money to do that. Her problem is the mindset of, is it always going to be there? Mm-hmm. I've got this lump sum of money. I keep getting more money. I have money that I can pay people. But what if I hire them and all of a sudden that money is gone? And so it's getting her to understand, what would you do if you didn't have to do these things that take your energy and are taking up all your time? What would you do? Right. And this is our session on the other day. And she's like listing up the things. If you do that, if you're speaking and you're booking more speaking engagements, what does that do? Oh my God, it opens up the gate. More people are noticing me. Now all of a sudden I can book out my schedule for all my other coaches or my employees. And it's like, and so it's awesome because it's so awesome for her to say, I've got this amount of money in my account because it's beautiful. It's awesome. I call it empowering the empowerers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what lights me up. I love it.
It is. You can see it.
You can tell. Oh, absolutely. It's in your.
That's a beautiful story.
Voice.
I love that. That's so cool. It's amazing that you guys have only met in person twice too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was because I want to meet Sparkle now.
You got to meet Sparkle. we're trying to plan for her to come back up here and speak. And so we were in a coaching session one time. She was like, we need to meet in person. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And she was like, what should we do? And I'm like, well, you've been saying that you want to launch your speaking career. What if I threw an event here? And she was like, oh my God. I'm like, could you fly out if I did that? And she was like, yeah. And so we got an event at the Lighthouse. We had like 40 or 50 people. And it was literally October of 2020 or 2021. Okay. So it was 2021. Yeah. Yep. Because we had people that couldn't come because they had COVID. And like, it was nuts. It was crazy, but it was awesome.
That is so cool. Well, yeah, that sounds like an amazing journey so far because obviously it's still in
going.
Process.
Yep.
So we're probably about out of time for today.
Yeah.
And there's so much we haven't had a chance to cover yet. So we'll have to have you back on our show.
5,000%.
Thank you so much.
Can I mention,
yes,
because you talked about the objection handling boot camp and just mentioning, because so like the people I work with and we talked about a lot about these entrepreneurs, a lot of times they're starting and one of the things you had asked is like, what's the biggest challenge of the people that you're working with is that they're doing everything. Mm-hmm. You mentioned it, like they're selling, they've got to sell, they've got to market, they've got to then go do whatever that they are, whether it's the coaching or the whatever service that they are offering, they're doing all of those things, right? And so when you're selling and you're not used to it, there's a lot that goes into, like most of it is that little voice in your head that's telling you, don't bug those people. They don't want your stuff. If you send that email, you're going to seem pushy, like all those things. And so me and my partner, Denise, created a program called Objection Handling Bootcamp, and we offer it here locally in person. We're launching off a Zoom that we're going to do to make it open for more people that we're going to do once a week. We're doing in person once a week and a Zoom once a week. It's 90 minutes. And it's the framework, but most importantly, it's the practice. It's the practice of, because I can train you and I can stand up and speak, but that doesn't change your inner thoughts. Mm-hmm. It doesn't change your behaviors.
That voice is powerful.
That voice is powerful. I've had so many clients Sandler training is a great training, but I had so many clients that I've worked with that took Sandler training beforehand. Great strategies. They didn't believe in them though. And if you don't believe in them, if they're not your strategies, like you're not gonna be successful at it. Like the belief system is everything. That little voice is everything. Mm-hmm. I could say exactly word for word what you just told me to say, but if I don't believe in it, that person across the table knows it. Mm-hmm. And so absolutely. The thing that we work on the most is overcoming that belief system. I just wanted to throw that out there for people that want to know more. They can check out objectionhandlingbootcamp.com. So it's objectionhandlingbootcamp.com. We do offer a free session so people can come and experience it. It's 90 minutes. We're doing it right now 9 to 10:30 at the Brighton Chamber, but 9 to 10:30, and people can stop in. Just go to the Objection Handling Bootcamp and apply for the free session.
Awesome. No, that's great. That's fantastic. I'm super happy you were able to share that information because I do think it's invaluable to businesses and entrepreneurs that want to get involved. And that's a huge, huge component to it. I mean, we all have those self-limiting beliefs, and to overcome those are huge. So really understanding, like, is this the truth, right? Like, is this really how it is? Like asking yourself those questions.
Last little story is it's really cool. A few weeks ago, we had Shar from the Hub, and she was in the boot camp, and then she was there and she saw Stu from Fastest Labs.
Oh, yeah.
And so one of the things that we work on isn't just overcoming, we work on one or two things, either overcoming objections or compelling conversations. Like when you're out at a networking event, for example. So people listening to this that are going to events with the Howell Chamber, your after hours, your breakfast, all that kind of stuff, what are you saying that's getting people that are saying like, oh, I want to know more? You know, what are you saying that's getting people excited? So most people don't have a thing. And so we have a framework, but then we practice it. And so we had Stu go, and he was in the course this day that Shar was there. And so he practiced it over and over, and he stumbled. The next day, we're there. It's a Tuesday happy hour, and I see Stu there, and we're talking, and he comes over to my circle, and Johannan Dixon was like, "Hey, what do you do?" And Stu goes flawlessly into his compelling conversation framework. And Johannan's like, oh my God, I resonate completely with what you're saying. I've got so many clients that need to meet you. And they connected and passed out their cards and was like, I'm going to introduce you to a bunch of people that needed to get to know you. It was so cool to witness that and see that happen, because it's again, being able to see it. So if you want to check it out, come and check it out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the invitation. And thank you so much for joining us today and just sharing your story. It's always interesting.
You just always learn those little nuggets that you can just take away and just begin applying right away. And if it's nothing more than just squashing that voice.
Absolutely.
It's just like a little bug that you just have to just squash.
Right.
It's hard to do, but once you do it,
it takes repetition.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jason.
My pleasure.
All right. We look forward to talking to you guys next time on the Howell Business Beat.